Well, welcome to Module 2, where we look at how to care for your everyday health through good eating habits and natural remedies. Well, in this lesson, we will delve into diet and moods, and this topic is really close to my heart, as I've seen my own daughter just struggle through in moods before I found out how I could help her. Well, my daughter does not have any mainstream neurological conditions, at least unknown to me. And I believe that I was parenting really fine and being the most empathetic parent ever. But there were times where her behavior would just flip from a totally happy child to a totally different and unreasonable child. And oftentimes I see parents complaining that their child is naughty and so forth. But to me, there are no naughty children. It's just children asking for help. And we need to look into the cause of that behavior. If you as a parent have done your utmost in parenting and your child has not got any medical conditions identified, then what I'm going to share with you next might just be the tipping point for you. Well, we have heard of the saying, you are what you eat. Well, what we eat not only affects our health and immunity, but what we eat also determines the outcome of our moods. And especially for children, because they are in general very much more sensitive to foods and resulting in mood changes very quickly. So, for instance, too much salt and sugar can make a child hyperactive and shifting his nervous system into fight or flight. And too many carbohydrates will actually increase yeast and candida, which causes behaviors like hyperactivity, some kind of aggression, and chemicals, dyes, phenols, glutamates, and preservatives in foods do cause mood and behavior changes. And children who are hypersensitive to foods will develop imbalances in their neurotransmitters, um, food sensitive intolerances, hyperglycemia, brain allergies, and excitotoxicity. And all of this result in heightened um, mood issues. So let me talk a little bit about each of these. Well, firstly, imbalances in the neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers in our brain, and they tell our body what to do. So there are excitatory neurotransmitters and inhibitory neurotransmitters, which are the calming neurotransmitters. And some neurotransmitters are made in our body from certain foods that we eat. For example, tryptophan. It's an amino acid found in protein and converts into serotonin, which is known as the calming neurotransmitter. Tyrosine, on the other hand, is an amino acid that converts into dopamine, and that causes the cravings and addictions and inappropriate thinking process when it's elevated. And also there's something called the norepinephrine, it's a mouthful, and it causes the anxiety and stress when elevated. So foods, especially the sugar and carbohydrates, they do cause some chemical imbalances in neurotransmitters in our brain, and that has an effect on the moods and behaviors. Next, you are quite familiar with hypoglycemia, which is the sugar rush. So what happens is the blood sugar that occurs when glucose levels actually drop, causing energy levels to drop. So an increase in blood sugar levels from eating sugar or carbohydrates can increase the neurotransmitter dopamine, which then triggers these addictive kind of behaviors and cravings. And when this happens, the body craves something sweet to boost energy and initiates a vicious cycle of sugar highs and sugar lows. A diet high in sugar and carbohydrates, such as your potato chips, your donuts, french fries, bagels, baked goods, even ketchup and fast food and food additives. These all trigger symptoms of mood swings and hyperactivity, sometimes confusion, depression, irritability, and anxiety. And then there is the food sensitivities and intolerances for children that are known to have adverse effects on their mood and behaviors. But unfortunately, many parents, when they see unwanted behaviors, such as the depression and the mood swings, they tend to seek out the pediatricians who would be quick to prescribe medication instead of examining the child's diet and looking for the triggers that are creating the food sensitivities and intolerances. Well, food sensitivities and intolerance in children with neurological disorders are known to develop elevated anxiety and mood swings and depression and meltdowns, non-compliant behaviors and aggression, and also inability to sleep. But I find that such symptoms are not, just affecting them, but also us as adults and also other children who are not sensitive. So things like the MSG containing foods, dyes and the glutamates, the caseins, the nuts, may cause children to become picky eaters and prone to craving foods that their bodies are intolerant to. So if your child is a picky eater, it may be due to the chronic inflammatory response from the gastrointestinal system, and that exacerbates your symptoms and creates a vicious cycle unless the food intolerances are removed. And next, we talk about the excitotoxins or the taste enhancers. You might be very familiar with MSG, the monosodium glutamates, and then there is the aspartate. These are the amino acids that can excite and even damage neurons to the point of cell death. And excitotoxicity causes hyperactivity, seizures, insomnia, fight and flight anxieties, fears, lack of focus and concentration, and self-interest behaviors. Finally, we have the brain allergies. Now, brain allergies can upset hormone levels and neurotransmitters. Foods can create psychological, emotional and neurological symptoms in the child. Gluten and casein can be one of these contributing factors that are triggering some mental health issues. Researchers have done some studies by removing gluten from the diet of a teenager with schizophrenia, for example, and have seen the symptoms disappearing. Same was for casein with a bipolar patient. Or you may say that these symptoms do not apply to, your child or myself because they're not diagnosed with this kind of neurological disorders. However, I feel that some of these symptoms may actually exist, but in us, but they do not become observable, even though they are affecting us or our children, perhaps because we have the ability to cope with such emotions. But oftentimes when these chemicals have gone through a certain threshold, then we may see that the symptoms may present themselves. So none of the food triggers we mentioned above are good for our health, let alone our moods. So why don't we just avoid them altogether? Well, here are some basic guidelines you could implement. Firstly, eat a diet that is free of artificial colors, flavors, excitotoxins, preservatives. And then reduce or remove white foods like sugars, white flour, milk. Food should nourish our bodies, so do have very high quality proteins, carbohydrates and fats. Eat a generally plant-based diet with lots of fruits and vegetables, and complex carbohydrates. Eliminate trans fats and have good sources of fats like the fish, seeds, and other foods with good omega-3. Basically, eat a colorful diet of foods and real food. Well, I hope you enjoy the guidelines and have more reasons to eat well. In the next lesson, I'll be covering on macro and micronutrients, and I hope to see you there. But till then, I wish you love, health,